We stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, please.
Champagne is here. Appleyard? Here. Bush? Here. Campbell? Here. Clay? Here. Gingras? Here. Latender? Here. Matola? Here. Peterson? Here. Schaefer? Absent? Tedford? Here. Wakefield? Here. Winkler? Here. Mr. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. Is there anybody here for Citizens Forum? Name and address. You know that.
I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Joe Tarzi, 155 West Main Street, Rockville, Connecticut. The town policy on the filming of public meetings. I read an article on it yesterday in the newspaper, and it seems like a bad idea. It seems like, to paraphrase your town attorney, it seems like a big old can of worms that you're going to open up, and that's from the guy who who you pay to keep you from opening up big old can of worms. So I just wanted to say that I don't think it's a good idea for the council to limit how the meetings are filmed, as long as it's non-disruptive and, as defined by the town attorney, non-disruptive. And I would be curious, I'm not allowed to ask a question, but I'd be curious if one of the councilors would ask during discussion what the consequence would be for someone who violates this policy. I hope it's not 50 days in jail. Thank you very much.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak at Citizens Forum? Name and address.
Good evening, John Kopek, 24 Jan Drive. I'd also like to talk tonight about the policy regarding videotaping council meetings. I'm not here to offer an opinion, yes or no, but I figured I'd give you my perspective, having sat where you guys sat. I happen to have the privilege of sitting next to some of the daily camera equipment in the room. The cameras that the town uses to record the meetings are fairly innocuous. You don't notice them when you're up here. It's not in your face, and that's fine. But when you're up there at the table and you've got this camera pointed right next to your face, whether it's intentional or not, it can be, quite frankly, intimidating. And I think that that's something that should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else for Citizens Forum? Seeing none, I'll close Citizens Forum. All right, a couple things for Mayor's report. As many of you may have seen on our website, we received a call from a resident relative to a threatening phone call she received. The caller identified themselves as the town of Vernon and that they wanted payment for back taxes, and if the payment wasn't received, the caller would issue a warrant for the resident's arrest. Immediately, we contacted the police department and formulated a response on our website and contacted the press outlets via the police department. Should anyone receive a call of this nature, they should contact the Vernon Police Department at the routine number, which is 860-872-9126. Don't pay anyone who calls asking for money. The town of Vernon does not collect taxes over the telephone. There's many scams that go around, especially this time of the year, and when it comes to taxes, there are quite a few out there. Thank you for responding to our quorum calls relative to the budget hearings. Based on your responses, we will have a quorum at all of the meetings. Budgets come out on March 15th, 2016, and hearings begin on March 19th, 2016. The Connecticut Department of Public Health and the American Heart Association has designated the town of Vernon a heart-safe community for 2016, thanks to the efforts of our EMS, fire, and police department for their extra efforts on the town's behalf. The next events magazine has been submitted and should go to print by the end of the month. expect to receive your copy in mid-March. Thank you. Consent agenda.
Your Honor, move the consent agenda.
Seconded by Laura Bush. Is there anybody else? No? All right. All those in favor of the consent agenda item? Unanimous. Right. New business number 1.
Request the Town Council authorizes Mayor Daniel A. Champagne to execute the memorandum of agreement with the State of Connecticut Homeland Security Department relative to the FFY 2015 State Homeland Security Grant Program. I'm sorry, I read the top. Do it again. The Town Council hereby authorizes Mayor Daniel A. Champagne to execute a memorandum of agreement on behalf of the Town of Vernon with the State of Connecticut Homeland Security Department relative to the FFY 2015 State Homeland Security Grant Program, and further agrees to be the custodial owner of regional assets.
Seconded by Laura Bush. Any questions? This is the grant we do every year. Bill?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a general question. How will the town of Vernon benefit from these grants if awarded?
Are you asking me or through me?
Through you.
Oh, I didn't know who you were asking.
I'll ask whoever can answer the question if you would prefer to answer it.
You said through me, I'll let Mike take care of it.
Okay.
I think he's going to have a better answer.
Oh, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Campbell. We, as you know, we've participated in this grant program for over a decade now. And the real, I think the real benefit of this grant program is twofold. First, as a town, if we were to receive the funding as a town only, it would be nominal compared to the total award. So as a region, we look at it, and we're part of Region 3, which is about 35 or so towns, including the capital region. The grants are based on a per capita, so we participate in a larger pool of funding because of that. And as a region, because we have more funds available to the region, we're able to strategically determine what's in our best interest, what do we need, and be able to go out and actually afford to buy it. So, for example, Vernon currently is the custodial owner of a decontamination trailer. That's the asset that we maintain for the region as part of this grant application. Other assets, and I have a map here of all the assets in the entire state, and if we look at our region, there's several mass casualty trailers, other response types of apparatus, bomb squad. The CREST team participates in this as well. So again, the real benefit for us is that we are able to access millions of dollars worth of assets that we would not otherwise be able to go out and purchase on our own. So if they need to get deployed, we call through our mutual aid system for Talon to bring over something if we need it, and vice versa. If Talon needs something from us, let's say our decon trailer, we're able to deploy that as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. New business number 2.
The Town Council hereby adopts the Town Council's policy on filming of public meetings as presented on the new paper that's on our table tonight.
Seconded by Bill Campbell. Questions? Mr. Winkler.
Yes, I'd like to say at the outset that any question I ask is rhetorical, and I am not yielding the floor for answers. Let's go through the policy one step at a time. Number 1, for meetings that occur in the council chambers, cameras and accessories, including tripods, may be set up in the back northern half of the council chambers. Why half? Why not 2/3? Why not 1/3? It's purely arbitrary. Now, with today's lenses, doing close-ups of council members is going to be no problem. All this ensures is that the face of someone speaking at Citizens Forum will never be seen again, or at least that's the intent. Number 2, cameras and accessories, including tripods, may be set up. Can't get in the way of exits. Fine. 3, the person filming should be as inconspicuous as possible. Fine. 4, cameras and accessories may not be set up adjacent to or behind the table or chairs set aside for committee members. So look at our arrangement. If you can't be adjacent to or behind the table here, you will never be able to film the face of anybody at Citizens Forum ever again. Filming may only take place once a meeting has opened. Not true. This is a public meeting place. Anybody can come in here anytime with a camera operating, and there's nothing we can do about it. It is against the law to film somebody without their consent unless they are in a public place with no expectation of privacy. And this town council chamber, a public meeting place in a public building, is quintessentially a public place where there is no expectation of privacy. A meeting is considered closed during a recess, and no filming may occur during this time. That's not accurate for the same reason. Anybody can leave the camera on. In fact, since you're not allowed to send dead airspace according to FCC rules, the camera usually focuses on a flag or the state seal when we're in recess because they cannot send dead air. So this would affect our own filming of the meeting. Meetings recorded solely by the town of Vernon using approved audio and video equipment shall constitute an official meeting recording of a Vernon board or commission. That's fine. We shoot a television show, and the Community Voice channel broadcasts all television shows. If one of the camera people who came here one night was told that their presence was probably a violation of the Freedom of Information Commission because the council is responsible for the official version. Well, that was obvious nonsense. Any member of the public can film this meeting at any time, before, during, or after the meeting, or during recess. And any attorney worth their salt will tell you that's Connecticut's law. And I've consulted at least 3 attorneys on this subject. Okay, so if you approve this, and I assume that the party whip has been wielded and everybody on the Republican side will vote for this, then I will, of course, appeal it to the Freedom of Information Commission probably tomorrow. I spoke with the Freedom of Information Commission today because the mayor has said repeatedly that this was passed by the Freedom of Information Commission. That is not accurate. The Freedom of Information Commission is a group of citizens who constitute a board that make policy decisions concerning freedom of information and has been given great latitude and power by the legislature. They have never seen this policy. They have never met on this policy. So it was not approved by the Freedom of Information Commission. The town did speak to a member of the Freedom of Information Commission staff who told them that a lot of the information in this is standard sort of boilerplate language. However, not being immediately cognizant of the arrangement of this chamber, he did not know the effect that it would have. For instance, I consider the fact that nobody who comes here to testify in front of us or to speak at Citizens Forum will ever have their face shown again is an example of censorship. Why give a face to the person who's telling you you might be doing something wrong? And I think once the Freedom of Information Commission understands this situation, understands the size of this room and what half means, and understands that nobody will ever be able to see somebody at Citizens Forum speaking again, I think that they will agree that it's censorship and this will be struck down. I would also like to state that the Board of Education and every other town around here has cameras behind or adjacent to the members. Also, the camera person changes position to get the face of anyone who's talking, and this policy is just a step backwards in terms of the public being able to see what goes on here. Thank you.
Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question about the nature of this policy. It seems to me that this policy pertains to those filming other than the town. Is that correct? In other words, this wouldn't prevent us from having cameras here, which are behind the desk here. This does not pertain to the town itself, I presume. Is that correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
So anybody else has questions? Ann?
I don't have questions. I just have comment. This is a very concerning policy to me. To me, this is a slap in the face to open government. If you look at any, as Mr. Winkler says, if you watch any public television or community voice channel or the congressional hearings or your state government channel, there are television cameras taking photographs of everybody around the panel, and it's done so that you can see the speakers, so that you're able to see who's giving the presentation, and that can't be done here. One of the more frequent ones that I attend is the Planning and Zoning Commission, and one of the key presentations is always the applicant. They sit here and they face here. You would never see that presentation, or you don't see that presentation unless you are able to put a camera behind the table here or located over there. I think this is unnecessary. I have been to the commission hearings that Mr. Winkler has taped. There is no disruption. Everything operates very smoothly. There's a handful of people in the room. It's not anything that requires any kind of a policy. I was completely taken aback by it when I saw it. I said, why do we need it? And then if you think about that a little more, I think we all know that there's some issues and have been some issues for some time, and I just think it's wrong for our board, my colleagues and friends around the board, to be voting on a policy that is rooted somewhere in personal issues. And that's what this is about, and I think we need to face the facts and be honest with ourselves. So I think this is wrong, and I think this issue could be solved other ways, but not here at this table. We should not be voting on this kind of a policy for this reason.
Mr. Campbell, second time.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. If I speak now, can I offer later an amendment to this policy?
Why don't you hold off if you want to do that?
Well, because
or do both right now. Do both.
Okay. Well, let me first say that what I've heard from my two colleagues, I want to be sure that we all understand the nature of this policy. We would still have people's faces on camera because this doesn't pertain to the normal process that the town goes through in recording the proceedings, if I'm not mistaken. So perhaps somebody could tell us what we normally do that this doesn't pertain to. In other words, the cameras that we have, we've heard criticism that they might not be easy to watch or hear. If we can talk about the improvements, the things that will remain, even if this is passed, it might be helpful to the members around the table. Secondly, I guess if I have to make my motion at this point, I'd like to...
Well, the question can be answered and then...
Okay, that would be preferable. Thank you.
So the first part is, I guess there's been a problem with the video being seen at home during the meetings. And that has been solved. The actual piece of equipment that was broken was a time-based corrector, which was at the community voice channel, and that belonged to the cable company. That's been corrected, and now videos are pretty clear at home now. So that's a major change. We're also in the process of upgrading our equipment and upgrading the way we're going to operate it. That's going to take place over the summer. We're also looking into having all our videos on our webpage. So when you go to the town of Vernon, you'll be able to pick out any town council meeting, and you can download it and see what's going on with it. Is that what you were looking for?
Very much. That helps a lot. So we'll still be doing that. We'll still have cameras focusing on the speakers' faces. We'll still have the town's recording of the minutes, or the minutes of the progress of the meeting. This policy is not intended to stop that. This is other people that might come in to film the proceedings. That's correct? I'm correct in assuming that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then I'll just move on to my motion here. When I look at it, I'm looking at item 1 for meetings that occur in the council chambers. And it reads, cameras and accessories, including tripods, may be set up in the back northern half of the council chambers. I would make a motion to delete northern. Be set up in the back half is fine by me, as there might be some discussion here as to which way is north. Thank you.
Do we have a second to that? Second by Steve. Any questions about striking northern? All those in favor of striking northern? Against? Okay, 3 against. Okay, passes. The word northern is struck. Any other questions? The town attorney and the assistant town attorney are here as well. Mr. Winkler.
Yes. I can understand why my colleague wouldn't watch the videos of the town council meetings, because all of my colleagues are at the meetings. But if you watch the meetings, you will see the camera back there is left at completely wide angle. We installed these cameras 6 years ago. They are excellent cameras. They pan, they zoom, and they rotate on gimbals. We don't use any of that. That camera back there is left as wide open as it can be, so wide open that you can't even tell sometimes which one of us is talking. And that camera is not used to show the faces of people speaking at Citizens Forum. We put it there for that over 6 years ago, and I saw that it was used to very good effect by Hal Cummings during a Republican convention once, but it is not used to show the faces of people at Citizens Forum. And when I asked why there's no panning, there's no zooming, there's no cutting, there's no switching back from camera to camera, I was told it was because it would give the public headaches. I complained for 2 years about the quality of the video in this council chambers. And for 2 years, nothing was done, even though at the very beginning of the mayor's first term, we approved, I think it was $60,000 to clear up all these problems. And not, as far as I know, absolutely nothing was done. 2 years. The only reason there's any motion now is because they lost control. Other people are doing it now. So now they're going to clean up their act after 2 years. For 2 years, the screen was a dark green. There were wavy lines through it, and there was poor sound quality. The piece of equipment the mayor mentioned was only responsible for the 15-minute gap. It wasn't responsible. The night Krupinski spoke, his speech disappeared, and people had a conspiracy theory about it. It wasn't a conspiracy at all. It was just a piece of equipment crapped out, and they fixed that. But, so there are no faces for Citizens Forum now. So, hopefully, the town will finally begin to broadcast these meetings the way they should be broadcast. Hopefully, there won't be this thin skin that prevents people from showing the faces of people who might be critical of us. We're tough, we can take it. If that camera starts to be used, and that camera starts to be used, and they're used to their full potential, there will be absolutely no reason to film these meetings. But until that is done, the only pressure we have is to do it ourselves and pressure the administration into doing it correctly. We gave them $60,000 over 2 years ago.
First of all, you're not pressuring.
And they won't use, I have not yielded the floor.
We've
not yielded the floor. You are out of order. For 2 years, you told me you are out of order. You are out of order.
So I'm going to call you.
You are out of order.
Yeah, thank you.
For 2 years,
override it.
I told you for 2 years to fix this system, and you refused. Every day I told you, you said,
no,
we're working on it, we've got a contract almost signed. You told me that for 2 years.
We've been working on this for 2 years, Mr. Winkler.
Well, it doesn't take that long.
Well, it does when we get into the complexities.
It only does because you don't want to be videotaped. See that monitor in front of you? That's just to prevent me from taking a picture of you. And when I sat over there, that monitor was over there. Before, you had 2 poinsettia plants on either side of you.
Absolutely.
You don't like to be filmed, so you make sure nobody can see us.
No, Mr. Winkler, I'll answer you. I don't like to be filmed by you because you say untruths when you refer to us in our videos. And I'd rather not, if I'm going to be videoed, I'd rather be videoed by the town where I know the truth is going to come out instead of captions being put out on the internet with untruths that you like to spread. That's the reason that I don't like to be videotaped by your camera.
Could you mention an untruth just so we know what you're talking about?
Everybody knows what it is.
No.
Yes. You can go back to your editorials in the newspaper. We can go back to just about anything.
That's fine. My editorials in the newspaper don't have video attached. Could you just give us one example of an untruth that was said about you in a video?
I'm not going to give you an example.
I figured you wouldn't.
But I have them saved.
I would appreciate you bringing them up sometime. That would be good.
Thanks.
Somehow I don't think we'll see them, though.
Oh, I'm sure we will. Is there any other questions? Is there any questions for the attorneys? Ginny.
This is terribly uncomfortable. I think we all feel that way. And yet, facts have been presented by people, and I think we need to look at the facts very carefully. And I must agree with Mr. Winkler. I did see one of the videos, and I thought, my God, I know it's going to be corrected, but it was awful to think that we've had poor videos presented to the public. I'm concerned. In fact, I had to share something with a friend of mine who couldn't see the person talking. That's a very good case. Somebody who had presented something as Citizens Forum, and that person could never hear it and couldn't see the person, and that was upsetting. But my point is unsettling. But again, I like to look at things factually and try to make sense of exactly what is going on here. I don't think the policy is necessary. I really don't. And I think we've got to really pull this together. We're a good group of people who are trying to do the best we can. So all I can say is this has been very uncomfortable. Thank you.
Sorry you're uncomfortable, Ginny. This policy didn't come because of the town council. This was a complaint received by one of our volunteers. And if you read the article in the newspaper yesterday, that's all I did was refer to it as a volunteer. Okay, and we don't get enough volunteers in our commissions as you know it. And if one of our commissioners or more, there was more, came and basically complained because it was disruptive to have somebody walking behind him going to the camera. And that's where this whole policy came from. In fact, the policy wasn't done by me. It was turned over to John Ward and our town attorney. And they went through and did it. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them. Anybody else? Julie.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. May we ask questions of the attorneys?
Yes, you may.
Okay.
Gentlemen?
Good evening, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Attorney Spadaccini, on your, on the Connecticut General Act, it says that, you know, recording meetings or recorded for broadcast, subject to such rules as such public agency, assuming the town council, may have prescribed prior to such meeting. So am I to assume, or do you feel comfortable that this policy meets FOI's idea of subject to initiating a rule, or do you think that there's a good possibility that this would violate the FOI Commission's guidelines?
There you go.
I'm comfortable with the policy. I am comfortable that it would survive scrutiny from the FOI Commission. Just to give you a little background on the law on this, Connecticut General Statute 1-226 is the statute of the FOI group of statutes that govern broadcasting, recording of meetings. And what it basically says is that recordings and broadcastings can occur from the public subject to rules as such public agency may have prescribed prior to such meeting by any person, may occur by any person or any newspaper, radio, broadcasting company, television company. The photographer or broadcaster or its personnel shall be required to handle the photographing, broadcast, or recordings as inconspicuously as possible, and in such a manner as not to disturb the proceedings of the public agency. So what 1-226 essentially says is that the public has a right to record and to broadcast meetings that are open to the public. And it is, but however, it is subject to reasonable rules and policies adopted by the governing body. Now, there are a couple of cases on this that have gone before the FOI Commission, and in probably the most recent one, which dates back to around 2007, the Commissioner held that while Connecticut General Statute 1-226 permits the respondent, that would be the town, broad rules to implement, broad authority to implement rules regarding the taping of proceedings of its meetings. Such provision also grants the public the right to tape and record public meetings, and the statute inherently contemplates that both the agency and the public must act reasonably so that both parties' rights may be exercised harmoniously. So that's the standard. It's a reasonableness standard. So yes, there's some element of subjectivity here, whether a FOI commissioner would consider a proposed policy reasonable or not. What I look to, the decisions that I found contain far more extreme examples of essentially misconduct by a municipality, where there were two cases where the videotaping was only allowed to occur at the very back of the room. That's very different than what's being proposed here tonight. What's being proposed here tonight is essentially half of the room, right up, essentially what is the public seating section of the council chambers here. There were other rules that municipalities tried to impose, like saying you must, whoever's videotaping it must tape the entire meeting. And if they rebroadcast, it must be shown in its entirety. And also, there was one municipality who tried to impose a rule that said if a speaker did not wish to be videotaped, he or she could refuse being videotaped. Those were all found to be unreasonable, so to speak, and were overturned by the FOI Commission. We don't have any examples of that in this current policy. This policy allows the filming to occur in half of the room, essentially the entire section where the public is. What it doesn't allow is filming behind the council table. And the concern that I've heard voiced most consistently in my short period of time being exposed to this issue, and I do have a little perspective kind of being 100 feet back from this and being able to kind of look at it as a bit of an outsider's approach, but the concern I've heard most consistently is that members of boards, or some members of boards, are not comfortable with having cameras set up or people standing directly behind them or looming over them in the tight space that is between the council table and the council wall, and that the presence of equipment or people in that narrow space can be disruptive to the meeting by making board members uncomfortable, and such recordings may not be done in the most inconspicuous manner possible. The policy, I think it's important to keep things in a bit of perspective here. The policy that's before you tonight is limited to the town council only. Each other board or commission is free to adopt whatever policy they choose or no policy at all. But in this situation where you have 14 individuals sitting at a table at a council meeting, there's little space back there. What struck me as I kind of looked at the room before this meeting, and there's not a whole lot of space back there even when nobody's sitting at the council table. So there's issues of egress, there's whether it's interfering with the comfort level of some people sitting at the tables, and there's also, what was pointed out to me, there's a closet with AV equipment that sometimes you need to get access to. That all together has essentially been the impetus of putting some reasonable restrictions behind regarding filming behind the council table. Now, having said that, it's clear that there's no red line rule on this. It's a reasonableness standard, and a commissioner may rule otherwise. There's no guarantees here, but you're guided by the principles or the notions of reasonableness here, and there does seem to be a rational objective or a legitimate objective as to why you wish to limit taping in a particular area of the room. This policy does allow taping or filming in a large portion of the room, and while it may not allow for the best vantage point for somebody who may be sitting at this particular table, it does still allow some taping of the person sitting at this table. It does, you maybe get a side profile of their face, but the alternative is to allow taping that occurs or filming that occurs behind the council table where there's literally only a couple of feet of space, and when you have a full council table, that's quite crowded. So I certainly understand the objectives behind the policy. I also want to mention, because this has been written about in the paper and all, I did have the opportunity to have a conversation with Attorney Brantz today, and he has related to me that he does support this policy and that he agrees with it as a matter of policy. The remarks that he made at the planning and zoning workshop, I believe last week, were not in the context of, he was not commenting on any specific policy, he was not aware of this proposed policy, and he was speaking about it in the context of a room that was largely empty and a council table that was largely empty. There were several empty seats at the conference. Apparently this workshop was not that well attended, and there were several empty seats, and given that, weighing the reasonableness of all that, perhaps it's okay to have a camera back there when it's not looming over an individual or, creating a problem with egress. So that's where each board and commission kind of has to take a look at their own situation. If it's a commission that has only 4 or 5 members, then maybe it's appropriate to to allow a camera in that area behind the council table. But in a full meeting, as this board regularly has, I think you do have an argument that there's a reasonable right to restrict the placement of cameras and individuals behind the council table itself. And that's, I don't see that as being targeted towards any particular individual. I mean, as you know, on occasion, you have meetings, if you get a really hot topic, you could have 2, 3 TV cameras here. Do you want all 3 of those cameras setting up behind your council table? It's one of these, I think this policy is reasonable in light of the circumstances of this particular board. And that is that you have a full group of people here. And in that respect, I'm comfortable opining that this does not contravene the balancing or doesn't upset the delicate balance that the statute 1-226 sets, or the reasonableness standard that's been set in FOI decisions. I hope that lengthy answer answered your question.
May I clarify one thing that you just said, is that this rule you were saying applies to the town council meetings, but if I'm reading it, it said adopts public meetings for meetings that occur in the council chamber. So you're not just referring, you're saying if the town adopts this policy, it's the policy for the town, but if a particular board, planning and zoning, says they don't care to abide by this, they're allowed to do that. You had just mentioned that this applied only to the town council meetings.
Yes, that's correct. The statute itself says that each board must adopt its own policy. Well, no board has to adopt any policy, but one board can adopt a policy for another board, essentially.
Could you maybe comment on what Mr. Winkler said about number 5 and number 6 and give some clarity to that situation?
Well, I would agree with Mr. Winkler that there's no expectation of privacy in a public place. The question becomes, this chamber or any other part of this building or a government building, once there is not a meeting being held here anymore, does it remain a public place, or is it closed, or is it, the FOI law clearly says that when there's a meeting going on, a member of the public has a right to film, record it, photograph it. But the question, not all, and I would agree that there's no expectation of privacy in a public place. But once a meeting's adjourned, or if a meeting's in recess, are we dealing with the same circumstance? Takes 3 or 4 years.
When I was reviewing the general statute, I just want to understand maybe a little offshoot of the rule that we're looking to put forward here. It referred in the statute in section 1-200 that a public agency was any official of any town. Is a person that say one of our counselors or a person in the audience, are their videos subject to FOI guidelines? Can they be asked to provide, just as, can you FOI and say, I want a copy of your videotapes? And are they required to have them held and, onto them so that if someone questions them?
Are you saying, can an individual be a public agency? Is that your question? The answer is yes, under some circumstances. If you had, well, I'll give you an example. The old Hospital Cost Commission was a commission regulating DCH and, you know, all that stuff. Now there's a health czar, one person, she's a public agency, if that answers your question. My only comment is that some of you old-timers will remember that there was some opposition to, by the general public to videotaping these meetings because it seemed to prolong the debate when people were filmed. I just thought I'd lighten it up a little bit by saying that. I've reviewed this, although I had no hand in drafting the policy. It does track the requirements of the statute that Lou mentioned, 1-226, and the salient parts of that are that we'll call it the videotaping, be as inconspicuous as possible and in such a manner not to disturb the proceedings. I think those are the key ingredients, and the policy that was developed adopts that language wisely, and also, I can't find it now, but it's got to take, it can't interfere with meetings. That's basically the thing. It's got to be inconspicuous, and I can see that if a videographer were walking around behind you while people on the council, that wouldn't be inconspicuous in any way. So I think this policy is well drafted. I think it should be an ordinance. I don't think you should wait. I think you should pass this as a resolution. But this is serious business, and we'll make it, I would recommend you make it an ordinance which makes it harder to tamper with. Now, whether Brother Winkler's going to bring us to the Freedom of Information Commission like he did last week, I don't know, but that's his prerogative.
Okay, I think my question was someone that was videotaping the proceedings, not the town's videotaping. Is their video and recordings FOIable?
I don't understand the question, Julie. No, I'll ask her, Mr. Winkler. Whether that is a public record, that's your question. Whether Mr. Winkler's video is a public record. It could be argued that it is, and that's why it has to be controlled, I believe, that as the resolution would. If the town, when it gets up to speed, can tape these meetings, that is definitely a public record, and that seems to be the ultimate simple way to solve all this, but in the interim, the resolution does. I'm sorry I misinterpreted you.
Any other questions? Ann?
I'm not sure I understand. When we were talking about having a camera here, it was a camera on a tripod that was would not be feasible according to the way you were discussing it, Attorney Spadaccini, behind the councilman. But if one of the council persons themselves was taking their video on their desk, and it's obviously not a piece of equipment that's behind causing difficulty, does it include that?
I don't think it was designed for that.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that. And if you want to clarify that in your policy, you certainly can.
Through you, Your Honor, may I follow? So any councilman can continue to take or continue to video on their own camera on their desk in front of them under this policy.
Assuming that is inconspicuous and doesn't disturb the proceedings.
I would agree with that.
I think the council people are bound by that for sure. I mean, that's what the statute says. So if it did disturb the proceedings, it would be ruled out of order.
Okay.
If you had a camera, I don't know. I got it.
Ann?
Just one more question. So have we resolved the point that Mrs. Clay brought up, that is this, since we have to then remove the language that refers to this room, it is not applicable to the other commissions.
They would have to pass it themselves.
Right, but the way this is written, it still includes, no?
My apologies. Can you point me to the specific language you're referencing?
This only pertains to us. And number 2 basically talks about for meetings that occur in other locations, which is still us. This refers to the town council. That's what we're passing tonight.
All right, is not the room, the council, not the room. See, I don't think that's clear, because 2 still refers to the room.
Under the council, no matter where they're convened. That's the way I read it.
It's the council.
Right. 2 deals with if you wanted to have a meeting outside of this chamber.
Mm-hmm. If the other commissions want to pass a similar, that would be up to them. Any other questions? Ann, you all set?
I'm just not ready to vote on it at this time. I think I'd like to think about it a little more, so that's my...
First off, I'd like to say that I very much approve of updating our current system so that it would meet the needs of the people to be able to see the meeting. So I'm very much for that. So I would totally think that we should really get on doing that, because we shouldn't have to have people on the outside filming. So and the other point I want to make is, you know, I'm here as a council member, and my focus needs to be 100% on these meetings. So I personally would not want to take and distract my focus from these meetings to be fiddling with a film camera, trying to get the faces of other people that are coming to testify. My focus is to listen and to look at those faces myself to make sure I'm seeing what is happening. So I feel it's very important that I can see it, but when we have the public also seeing this, I think it's very important that we do have equipment that can show that. And I really feel that we should be doing that as quick as possible. Thank you.
Any other questions? You've already gone twice, Mr. Winkler.
So I'm confused. Right now, we are live, right?
Yes.
On CVC, with that camera that's mounted on the wall, and that camera that's mounted on the wall?
Is this camera working? It is working. And so you've been catching the faces of the attorneys right now? Okay.
So when the people came up for citizen forum, they were on CVC? Okay. And so there's problems with something. So now Mr. Dauphin is back there taping. What is he taping? Like, when is that showed? Is when we're not live, CVC rebroadcast this? Does that tape
belongs to Mr.
supplant?
Winkler.
Does that tape supplant the tape that's made from the two cameras? Meaning we're live now, but our replay is every Tuesday at 7 p.m.
No.
Does that video come in?
Our official version is the one that plays
Continuously.
Exactly. At least it's supposed
So
to.
that version that Mr. Dauphin is working on now is for
You got to ask Mr. Winkler.
Mr. Winkler? Is for what? Your personal edification of doing this?
Do I get to speak for a third time?
Not the chair.
You can go through me, Brian, if you want.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Winkler.
I think we can do that.
Over a year ago, the machine that the town used to make copies of this for the Community Voice channel broke, and the administration never fixed it. So for, I think, over a year, there has been no DVD from the council going to the Community Voice channel. Right now, my DVD is the only DVD that goes there for rebroadcast. So I think the town... When was the last time you sent one?
That's for me to ask.
Yes, well, they have
Okay.
not been doing that.
That's for me to ask, Mr. Ruth. Have we been sending the copy over to? Yep. Okay. Okay.
No.
That's what we've been told. Okay. And have we done that? Have we picked up DVDs from them? Okay.
I happen to be on the board of directors of the CVC, and I know that's not...
So then it's not really our fault if CVC is not recording it and storing it to the DVD, is it? Because that's the way I feel here. Like, this whole is my fault. I don't really want it to be my fault.
Every other town gives them a DVD, and they cannot broadcast it out of the jukebox.
What? Well, so, but I don't understand why every other town, why don't they just record it and rerun it on their own initiative? And I don't even think on DVD, they don't have to just do it digitally. But whatever. So, anyway, that's what I was curious about, was what was happening now and what was, so the other people, because I don't think, I see no cords coming off of Mr. Dauphin's camera, so I don't think nothing's live, nor
no.
Mr. Tarzi's camera, so I don't think he's live unless you've hitched it up to the internet or something. Yeah, so. The other thing I'm curious about, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the attorneys, thank you for coming, I love attorneys, was just a question, during recess, did you ever, no. During, is recess part, like the active part of the meeting, or if you recess, is that like unofficial, like how is recess treated?
Yeah, it's an interruption of the meeting. It's a break in the meeting, essentially. There's no business being conducted during that time.
So do I have any aspect of privacy?
That is a Fourth Amendment concept, mainly dealing with search and seizures. I don't know how it worked its way in. Well, it worked its way in here, but Mr. Woodward.
I think he's referring to, if I'm carrying on a conversation over there at the door.
Yeah.
All right, does anybody have the right to record my conversation if they're not part of it during a recess? Right.
It's a private conversation, and it's not a meeting of a public agency, it's in recess.
Right.
If, even if we're discussing business that's on the agenda?
A public meeting is a quorum of a public agency. So if you have Julie Clay talking to me in the doorway, she's not a quorum of a public agency at that point. She's a quorum of a public agency when she's seated here in session. That's a private conversation. And it's not a meeting because it's in recess. Makes logical sense.
The one exception to that rule is caucus.
We can have a caucus during recess. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate the time.
Any other questions? Ginny?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a simple comment. I know what I'm going to do for my homework. I'm going to sit and watch the next broadcast and take good notes. I think we all should.
The next
Seriously,
what?
the next broadcast of our meeting.
Oh.
Makes sense, right?
Anybody else? Steve?
Thank you, Your Honor. This is a comment. I don't know that I need to go to the attorneys with this. But if I'm wrong, somebody tell me I'm wrong. The basic reason that this policy came to pass, as we've heard tonight, is that there were complaints from the public about things that were happening behind them, around them, disrupting the meeting. The whole 226 uses the word disruptive. Anything that can be conceived as disruptive, and mine and Mr. Winkler's might be different, certainly is arguable in front of FOI. The way this thing is written, and with the explanations we've had from the town attorneys tonight about the intent, I don't see this as restricting anybody from doing anything that is non-disruptive. I, for one, would not want a camera behind me. That's just me. Maybe Mr. Winkler wouldn't care. I don't know. So, if our attorneys tell us that this is going to withstand, or it has a good chance of withstanding FOI, and this is just to protect our volunteer citizens, of course, the planning and zoning has to adopt their own, and they can use this as a template or adopt it word for word. That's up to them. If Mr. Winkler wants to challenge it, he's going to challenge it no matter what we do. Then I think we have to have some kind of policy in place to guarantee against disruption, and therefore, for today, for what I see, I will vote for this.
Any other questions? No? Okay, all those in favor? 6. 6 in favor. Opposed? 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed. Abstentions? 1 abstention. There's 1 missing. Okay, that makes sense. Did you get that? Okay. The policy passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Adoption of the minutes. Hold on, he's got to read it. Okay.
The town council waives the reading of the minutes of the regular town council meeting of February 2nd, 2016, and that minutes of said meeting be approved.
Seconded by Steve. Any questions, corrections? All those in favor? Unanimous. Oh, didn't even see it, Bill, sorry. All right, it's not unanimous. We have 10-4, 1 abstention. Okay. Right. All right, go ahead.
Move to adjourn.
Second by Laura. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Bill, your hand was up, right?